So this is I saw this yesterday. I think it's just kind of I thank you for showing this to me, but it's just kind of indicative of it, the ignorance of people. First and foremost, I had a conversation with that kid afterwards. We had a nice like thing, you know. My conversation about communism yesterday was far too aggressive. That's the only issue I have with it. I should have focused more on what we did and didn't agree on, rather than like be so aggressive. This video, it
This is like what,
basically.
I don't know, like a fast food worker would make in a communist system.
So the point here.
That's all my bits, Papa. Sorry, Papa.
That's okay.
2032.
Thank you. So my question here was how basically, and I use verb like this is the point. How is this real, and how does he have so many followers? Like, did he actually just say that? See, this is like a very ignorant from this individual.
What's the, so what?
So my question here is, hey, how do you value somebody who does more for society than doesn't? That was the question that I was trying to ask, and I said, how do you pay them more? You know, if you're gonna it's rather ignorant for you to intentionally misinterpret what I'm saying. You know what I'm asking. And the reason I asked that multiple times, simply put, I just wanted an answer because I don't think that people are going to be as incentivized to work harder if there isn't some kind of incentive to do so. Whether and honestly, it needs to be some form of material. You want me to replay it?
What's the difference between the pay, let's just say, like a doctor would make versus like what, I don't know, like a fast food worker would make?
That was it.
In a communist system. What's the?
That's it. That was the whole. That's the ridicule. Like, I understand that pay doesn't exist in communism, but you know what I'm asking. I'm asking about the value, right? And it was a very indirect answer I was getting. I was asking like, hey, how do we incentivize doctors to be doctors, right? And so that's what I was asking. They know that I have a VOD. They're just being ignorant. So yeah, that's it. This is I saw it yesterday. I just like rolled my eyes. I was like, all right, whatever, dude. It's actually rather ignorant, but whatever. It was a nice conversation. Actually, while we're kind of on the topic, I'd like to talk about this because I had the conversation yesterday, and like I'd like to, I'm probably not going to post it because I'm really not proud of it. The way I acted, and it was very, I was just not happy with the way that I acted. I'm rather disgusted with myself. Oh, hey, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs, Maniac419. I really appreciate that.
Him being raised Christian, but him more.
I'm gonna get to that afterwards. So I'm not gonna post it. The things that I wanted to say, like my reflections of it, because again, I'm not happy about it, were a couple of things that issues that I have with the communist system, right? So the first and foremost is the lack of incentive to do better. I think that from what I've seen from many communists, they kind of accept and understand that like we're going to hit like a technological halt of advancement once we should switch to communism. I think in order to get people to want to actually contribute to society more, you need to incentivize their contribution to the society. So there needs to be something, whether it's money or some kind of a status. But the thing is I think that money is literally an easy, streamlined representation of your value. It's just it's just a non-micromanaged way to do to like streamline value from one person to another. Another thing is you seem to have a lot of an emphasis on profit being inherently exploitative. I don't necessarily think so. I think that there's no issue with somebody having a profit. If you start a business and you're at the top and you create that business, I mean, not only are you investing your own personal wealth and savings into it, of course, that wouldn't happen under communism, but you're also leading that company in a direction where they're able to make more money and expand their reach, which would allow you, the lower workers, to theoretically get more money. Now, of course, streaming into that, people will say, like, yeah, but there's abusive systems in the United States, specifically the massive amount of wealth disparity we have in the United States, which is a point that he brought up. And I talked about universal basic income as a means to lower that disparity, as well as like a universal healthcare system that maintains a private option, in my opinion. And he rejected that, and due to the idea that it would create an apathetic society. Now, an apathetic society would be a society that cares less. And the only reason that you would care less about the suffrage that's being committed onto you, or the oppression that's being committed onto you, is if that oppression was reduced. And so if we reduce the oppression, we are reducing if we reduce the repression, we're fixing the system. And that's something that he very much rejected. He kept saying, well, what is the apathy isn't equal to happiness. And I was like, no, it's not. But in this context of giving some people more resources, it will make them happier and more apathetic to these oppression given onto them. So it is fixing the system, even if it's not purely fixed. It very much seemed like one of the things he wanted to do was, piss people off so much that they would get to a point where they wanted to overthrow the government. To me, I hate this new age idea of throwing things away if they're broken rather than fixing them. I think that you can fix capitalism. I think that it is still the best way moving forward. And even if you're somebody who thinks that communism is the best thing to do, then what you should do is you should slowly try to change capitalism into communism. And I would think that a universal basic income is the first step, right? This isn't something that's going to happen now. It's completely impractical, especially nowadays, to implement communism. If any country went communist, every other capitalist country would completely destroy them very, very easily, because it's going to create a weaker system, a weaker country, and that weaker country is going to get preyed on. That is the reality of the world. We're very much animals. And we have to contextualize that. I know there was a point where I mentioned his age versus my age. I know it sounds like I'm trying to say your perspective means less, but that's not what I was saying. I was saying that a lot of young kids, especially a lot of people, most people, almost all people really that I've seen that embrace like actual communism are usually younger kids who haven't experienced the real world and kind of live in an entitled space, honestly. And so I really do just genuinely, I don't see the practicality of being communist. There was also another point that he had made. It was an interesting point about how, he tried to make it seem like it was basically a fact that communism would be the thing, is the best system. He claimed that despite the fact that communism is basically a theory, it's never been implemented correctly or at all. And part of that is because of capitalist systems overtaking weak communist countries, for sure. I totally get that. But he tried to make it seem like the reason that we've had a rise and fall of every other civilization is because of some form of capitalism, or rather some form of hierarchy. But I argue it's not the existence of a hierarchy that causes us to hit a point of collapse. It is the disparity of that hierarchy. It is the disparity between, or the difference between the lower class and the upper class. I think that if we can maintain a solid class structure, we absolutely can succeed. And that's why I'm for universal basic income. That's why I'm for a single-payer healthcare system. That's why I'm for prison reform. That's why I'm for all these different things that will change us and kind of recollect us back and be much more empathetic. That's why I'm for empathy, because that's what I would say. I think that capitalism is very much lacking of empathy. Communism is far too empathetic, and I think that there's a middle ground, right? So I think that valuing empathy in society more is definitely a really solid way forward for us to go better. And again, if in 100 years we take slow steps towards being more communist, as long as they're necessary steps that actually are a net positive for us, maybe we'll get to communism. But right now, there is no clear path, and completely destroying an entire civilization or an entire frame of thought or our entire country just on a dream that everybody basically gets valued the same, regardless of how much better or worse one or another person, one person is over another. It's just a fast track to destruction. I just don't see it as the right way to go. So. Kind of wanted to throw there at there. That's my recollect. Again, I'm not going to post it because I'm not very happy with the way that I acted. I don't think that my takes were necessarily wrong, but I think I could have done better listening and focusing on the points of practicality rather than being as aggressive as I was. I think if I just toned down the aggression, it would have been better. But I gotta play to my audience. Well, I gotta play to the person I'm talking to. I know my debate with Consciously got aggressive, but we were both aggressive men. That was a younger kid, and I shouldn't have been as bullish as I was. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that really quick since we're on the topic of this. Yeah, let me put the alerts back on. Thank you for the hype train, guys. No one puppy yesterday.
The question I have from that video is, does the guy you talk to think there should be no rich people and better distribution of wealth so doctors still make more?
It was hard to get him to be very precise. He kept saying, well, it's up to the society. I think that's another problem I had with it, was that I would ask him simple questions like, hey, how do we for instance, how do we value doctors more? And he said, like, and it took a long time for him to finally say, like, oh, maybe we could do this. But what he was saying is it's up to the society. And then I would say, well, if you don't value a doctor more, they're not going to become doctors, because honestly, a big reason that people want to become better. Well, the reason that people become doctors, part of it's because of the pay. No one's going to spend 12 years as going through medical school to come out of the other side making the same amount as somebody at the bottom. That was one of the things. I also had a question about, like, how in this new communist society would we orient people towards professions that are necessary for society. It's very hard to micromanage, especially on the scale of 330 million people. Communism might work for 100 people or 1,000 people, but how do you make sure people are pushed into the correct economic spaces that are, or rather, just the correct spaces that are good enough? That will just continuously keep society flowing. And I think capitalism has a way of doing that. Maybe that's a little too harsh because of desperation. We could do better with schools, telling them to, like, push people towards better jobs. But, I'm just saying. I also
thank you so much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah, I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.